My name is Alden MacDonald. I am a certified executive chef and full-time faculty member here in the Hospitality Leadership Program at Northern Michigan University. Today, we're going to make corn soup. Corn soup is a great fall and winter dish. I love making soups in the fall. And so this dish adds a little bit of that Southwest flavor that we love. It's super simple. One pot dish and great kind of thing to do. You could even put all your ingredients like this in a crock pot and set it on low and come back at the end of the day and have a nice soup waiting for you. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to handle a spicy pepper. And the reason I wanted to show you this today in this video is because a lot of times people don't realize that the spiciness of a pepper can actually get on your skin. So I'm wearing gloves, and if you don't have gloves, I'm going to give you a few pointers on how to do that at home if you don't have gloves, and also ways to offset that on your skin. So if you're processing a pepper and you get the spicy juices on your skin, if you say like rub your eye later after you're done, even if you've washed your hands, the capsaicin, that's the spicy stuff that makes pepper spicy, can be in your skin and actually irritate your eye, your skin, your nose. I've done it before and it is not pleasant. So the one thing that I can recommend is if you can have access to reusable gloves, get yourself some, or not reusable, disposable gloves, get yourself some disposable gloves and use them. The next thing you want to do is if you have a knife hand and a handling hand, keep the handling hand the only one that touches the pepper. That way you can kind of remind yourself like, oh, don't rub my eye later after I'm done cooking with my left hand. So I cut the top off. And I cut this in half. This is a jalapeno. It's very big. I'm only going to use half for this recipe because it's so big. But I have the insides. So there's two ways you can scoop the insides out. The insides are bitter and very spicy. So the seeds are too. So be aware of that. Today what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my knife. And I'm just going to cut because I've got gloves on. Cut on the sides there. And then I just scoop it out with my finger. And put it in here. Like this. If you don't have disposable gloves, don't do it this way. What you're going to do is you're going to get a spoon, just a little spoon that you have for eating cereal or whatever in your house, and scoop that out with a spoon. That way you're not using your fingers to scoop it out, and those spiciness is not getting into your hands and your skin. So I'm going to do the same thing here, where I'm just going to cut the side here a little bit to loosen that up. And I'm going to scoop that out with my finger. Like I said, the innards are very spicy and so are the seeds, and they tend to be bitter. In fact, any of those white parts, and they're like a bell pepper, the white part, even on a citrus, like a lemon or whatever, all that's very bitter, that white part. It's called pith, P-I-T-H, pith. And so these both are ready to go. I'm going to take this and kind of scoop up with my knife, get these seeds off my board, because I don't want those in my food. There we go. Put that off to the side. Now, if you are a very ambitious person, you can absolutely plant those and grow them. For most of us, though, you can just compost them. If you don't have a compost, they go fine in the trash as well. Whenever I'm working with a spicy pepper, I always like to cut that much smaller than the rest of my vegetables. You want to make sure your knife is nice and sharp if you do it this way. If you don't have a super sharp knife, flip it over and make sure your skin's side down. The reason why is if you don't have a nice sharp knife to cut through that skin, it can actually cause you to jump on the skin. It'll actually pop off that skin and your knife blade, and you can cut yourself. So be aware of that. So flip her over if you don't have a super sharp knife. I'm a chef, so I have really sharp knives. And I'm going to cut that really thin. Notice when I hold my knife too, and I'm going to cut this whole pepper up, and because why would I wait? I'm going to cut it all up and use this in a different recipe later, you know, and then put it back in my refrigerator at home or whatever. Notice I keep my fingers curled and I pinch my blade and curve it. That's the way you're supposed to hold your knife. This is the safest way to hold your knife. So I pinch. You can see that I have my knuckles here, so I'm not going like this where I could cut my fingers or my thumb. I keep my thumb behind my fingers and I cut like this. Just like that. Nice and thin strips. Sometimes people call these julienne. Okay, and then I like to hold this together like this in real thin slices. And the reason why is because when you're making a soup like this, you want the flavor and a little bit of that spiciness of the pepper, but you don't want to take a big bite of the pepper. Most people, that does not sound delicious to most people. I love spicy food, so I don't know if I'd really bother by it, but most people. So I've got my jalapenos here now cut. Let's move that out of the way so you can see. And like I said, I'm only going to use half of this in my recipe, but the other half, after we're done with this recipe, I will package up and use later so we're not wasting. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get our veggies started. So here I have a pot. I have some oil or some butter in my pot that I'm going to melt. If you want to keep this dairy-free, use oil. That's perfectly fine. And then I want to saute some of my vegetables that are harder. So I've got my celery for my soup that I'm going to throw in here. There we go. I've got my peppers. And this is green bell pepper, and then I had a little bit of red bell pepper that was left over. It'll taste great in the soup, so I'm not going to let that bell pepper go to waste, that's for sure. So I throw that in there. Then I also have some potatoes. These potatoes are being stored in water so that they don't oxidize. I've already cut them up. That's great. I can already hear the sizzle. I'm going to throw those in there. That little bit of water that's on your hands, that's perfectly fine. Will not hurt the soup whatsoever. You can also get a colander. I do it this way because, quite frankly, I don't want to make another dish. So I'm just going to scoop them out with my hands. There we go. All right, that goes in there. Set this over here. I'm going to step off camera for a second and grab a spoon. Okay, I've got my spoon, and I'm just going to stir this up. And if you've ever watched any of my videos before, what I'm going to tell you to do right now, I'm going to tell you to salt your vegetables. And the reason we salt at this stage is because the salt will help bring out the excess moisture in your vegetables and will also begin to flavor your soup. Because we're making a soup, I am also going to put my pepper in there. Again, start flavoring. Salt is a flavor enhancer. Pepper is a spice and adds flavor. Great. So this is going to sit for about 3 to 5 minutes and saute. You're going to want to stir it fairly often because you don't want things to stick on the bottom of your pan, and you want to make sure that cooking is even. So we're going to let this saute for about 3 to 5 minutes, and then we're going to come back and add the rest of the components to our soup and let it start being soupy. Okay, we're back. Our veggies are almost done, but one thing I forgot in my recipe, because people forget, is the onion. So I'm going to just add that in here. And I'm going to saute that for a few more minutes till our onion is starting to get a little translucent. And then we'll come back, add our corn, our stock, jalapenos, and garlic, and get this going into soup. Okay, so our vegetables now, including our onions, have been sauteing, and they're starting to soften a little bit and get a little translucent. Translucent, all that means is that they get, when you have fresh vegetables, they look crisp and their color is like really, really solid. And when you cook a vegetable like a celery or an onion, they'll start to get a little bit see-through, and that's what translucent means. And so when a recipe says to cook it till it's translucent, that's what they're talking about. So then this is soup. So you don't have to worry about them completely being cooked all the way through because they're going to continue to cook in the soup. At this point in time, we want to add our garlic. So I've got 4 cloves of garlic. I love garlic, so there might be 5 or 6 in there. And then I'm going to put my jalapenos in there. Remember, that's half of that huge jalapeno that I cut up earlier. The other half I'll save and use in a different recipe. And so then I'm going to mix this in. Lovely. Then I'm going to add my corn. Got about 4 cups of corn here. I had a little bit more than 4 cups. And with soup, there's lots of leeway. I love that about soup. And so I didn't want to waste that corn. So I went ahead and added all of it. So it's really more about 5 cups there. The recipe calls for 4. It'll totally work if you only use 4. I'm going to mix this in. Great. Oh, it smells so good. I wish you could smell it. Smell-o-vision should be a thing. Okay, and then here I've got a vegetable stock that I made from scratch, but that doesn't mean you have to do that. You can get a store-bought vegetable stock, or you can make the corn stock. And the corn stock that they have, say this, you make this in the summertime and you've got the cobs left over from some fresh corn. Don't waste those cobs. You can actually make a really good stock out of it. Just take the cobs, some bay leaf, maybe some parsley, some water, put it in there, cover up your corn husks, the cobs, put them in there, and boil them on a really low, like simmer, for about 30, 45 minutes, and you have corn stock, which is a really great base for this soup or any other vegetable soup. And then you're using the whole vegetable, which feels really good. Because I don't know about you, but when I eat corn, and I've got that big cob at the end, I feel so wasteful. So it's a great way to use your cobs. So then I have vegetable stock here. I'm gonna add that in. And this soup is supposed to have lots of stuff in it. So this soup is not gonna be super brothy. It's gonna be super chunky, and it's supposed to be. So if you look at that and you go, ooh, there's not a lot of room in there. That's really, really like a lot of stuff in the soup, then you're doing it right. You're not doing it wrong. So I've got that on. And then I have some cornmeal. And the reason the cornmeal here is because I'm actually gonna sprinkle this in here, and the cornmeal is gonna thicken and soak up some of that moisture, and it's going to make this a little bit thicker and add another texture to your soup, which tastes really good when you take a bite of those vegetables and then the thicker soup. So I just mix it in. And then at this point in time, there we go, I'm going to add a little more salt. And the reason I add a little more salt right here is because I just added a bunch of vegetable stock I made from scratch. It doesn't have any salt in it. Then I'm going to taste it. Everyone has tiny little tasting spoons, right? That's fine. Just use a spoon at home. I'm going to stir this up to make sure my salt's all mixed in. And I just want to give it a quick taste. And the reason I taste it now, that's good. The reason I taste it now is because I want to make sure, do I need to add a lot more salt? Not enough salt? Or ooh, this is a little salty. What do I do? Add a little more stock or some, whatever. That's this point I want to see. Right now, I could use a little bit of salt, but I'm going to wait because I can taste all those flavors. But now it's just going to sit here and cook. So I'm going to bring this to a simmer. I'm going to let it simmer for about 30 minutes, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to take a look at this lovely soup. Okay, so our corn soup has simmered for about 30 minutes and it looks really good. Just a little cloudy from that cornmeal. I've adjusted the seasoning, added my salt and pepper to where I want it. And now it's time for the big reveal. I always like to take from the bottom of my pot and get all my chunks and then scoop up the broth from the top to finish out the bowl. And as you can see, we have a lovely bowl of corn soup. Would go great with corn muffins, a loaf of bread, a little bit of butter, dip it in there. Delicious on a nice, cool night.